On her wedding day, she was brutally abandoned at the altar by the groom, left alone and pregnant, publicly humiliated. Amidst the chaos and scandal, he, the best friend of the betrayer and the best man, witnessed the cruelty. An overwhelming protective instinct took hold of him. Driven by a sense of honor and compassion, Matthew, in an act that shocked everyone, proposed to her right there at the altar, in front of all the stunned guests. "I won't let you go through this alone. Will you marry me?" It was a proposal of salvation, born not of passion, but of a deep desire to protect her and give her and the baby a home. Watch this story to the end. You'll be surprised. If you like love stories and romance, subscribe to this channel and leave a comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing. The September sun gently warmed the gardens of the Grand Estate, one of the most elegant event venues in Westchester County, New York. Isabella "Izzy" Silva adjusted her veil for the 10th time, her hands trembling slightly as she watched her reflection in the antique mirror of the bridal suite. At 26 years old, she never imagined she'd make it this far. The daughter of a seamstress and a mechanic, she grew up in a modest neighborhood in Queens, where every dollar was counted twice before it was spent. But love had the power to transform any Cinderella, and Ralph Mendez had been her Prince Charming for 3 years. "You look beautiful, my darling," whispered Donna Carmen, her mother, as she smoothed out the folds of the dress borrowed from a distant cousin. The woman's eyes sparkled with contained tears. She had worked overtime for months to help pay for the ceremony, even though it was modest. Izzy smiled, but a strange feeling weighed on her stomach. It wasn't just pre-wedding jitters. 2 weeks ago, she had discovered something she hadn't yet had the courage to tell Ralph. She was pregnant. The news had filled her with ecstasy, but also apprehension. They had planned to wait a little longer before having children, but now she carried a life inside her, a small miracle that would be the perfect surprise for their honeymoon. Across town, in the penthouse of a commercial building in Midtown Manhattan, Matt Oliveira adjusted his tie in front of an imported crystal mirror. At 38 years old, he commanded one of the largest construction and design empires in the country, Oliveira and Associates. His buildings dotted the New York skyline as monuments to his success. But the man behind the fortune carried invisible scars. 5 years ago, his ex-fiancée, Letitia, had left him at the altar for a richer businessman, taking with her not only his heart, but also trade secrets that almost destroyed his company. "Ready to be a best man again?" asked Ralph, entering the office with a nervous smile. The two had met in engineering school, and Matt had witnessed his friend's transformation when he met Izzy. Ralph had always been a playboy, but the sweetness of that simple girl had made him want to be a better man. "The question is, are you ready to be a husband?" replied Matt, noticing something strange in his friend's behavior. "Everything okay? You seem tense." Ralph ran a hand through his hair, a rebellious strand escaping the gel. "It's just... Matt, I need to tell you something. Izzy, she's impregnant," Matt frowned. "And that's a problem." "I don't know if I'm ready to be a father," admitted Ralph, his voice cracking. "What if I can't do it? What if I screw everything up like my dad did with me?" An hour later, the guests had already taken their seats in the garden decorated with white flowers and gold ribbons. Izzy waited at the makeshift altar, her radiant smile contrasting with the growing worry in her eyes. 15 minutes late, then 20. The murmur of the guests began to grow. Matt checked his watch for the 3rd time. Where was Ralph? He tried, and calling, but the phone went straight to voicemail. A discomfort washed over him when he saw one of the catering staff approach with an envelope in his hand. "Mr. Oliveira, this was delivered for the bride." With trembling fingers, Izzy opened the envelope. The words danced before her eyes. "Izzy, forgive me, but I can't do this. I'm not ready to be a father or a husband. You deserve someone better. Don't look for me, Ralph. The paper slipped from her hands like a dry leaf. The world around her seemed to collapse in slow motion. The whispers turned into a deafening roar, all eyes fixed on her, on the abandoned bride, pregnant and humiliated in front of 70 people. Tears burned her eyes, but she remained standing, her pride being the only thing preventing her from collapsing completely. Matt watched the scene with a mixture of anger and compassion that surprised him. Ralph's cowardice was unforgivable, but it was Izzy's expression that broke his heart. A mixture of wounded dignity and silent despair. Without thinking twice, he walked to the altar. The steps echoed in the tense silence of the garden. "Izzy," he said, his firm voice cutting through the silence. All eyes turned to him. "Will you marry me?" The silence that followed Matt's proposal was deafening. Izzy stared at him with wide eyes, tears still glistening on her flushed cheeks. For an endless moment, only the sound of the wind swaying the white flowers of the altar broke the absolute stillness. "You... what?" she whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion. Matt reached out to her, his dark eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that made her momentarily forget where she was. "I won't let you go through this humiliation alone. Marry me now in front of all these guests who came to celebrate a wedding." The garden exploded in shocked murmurs. Donna Carmen brought her hand to her chest, unable to process what was happening. Ralph's guests whispered among themselves, some already grabbing their cell phones to photograph the surreal scene. "Mr. Oliveira," the priest's trembling voice interrupted the moment. "Are you sure about what you're doing?" Matt didn't take his eyes off Izzy. There was something about that woman, her dignity in the face of humiliation, the way she held back tears, the way she instinctively protected her womb, that awakened in him a protective instinct he felt in years. "I'm absolutely sure," he replied, his voice echoing clearly through the garden. "Izzy?" She studied him for a long moment. She knew Matt only by sight, from the few times Ralph had taken her to social events. She knew he was rich, powerful, respected. She also knew he was single and, according to gossip, bitter when it came to love. But there in front of her, offering to save her from the greatest humiliation of her life. "Why would you do this?" she asked, ignoring the increasingly loud whispers around them. "Because you don't deserve this," he replied simply, "and because Ralph is a coward who doesn't deserve either you or this child." The mention of the baby made Izzy instinctively place her hand on her belly. How did he know? Ralph must have told him. The reality of the situation hit her like a punch to the gut. She was pregnant, abandoned, and without the means to raise a child alone. Her family could barely support themselves. What future could she offer her child? "I do," she whispered, surprising herself. The ceremony that followed was surreal. The priest, still in shock, conducted the vows with a trembling voice. Matt answered firmly, but Izzy could barely form the words, still processing the impossible. Turn her life had taken in a matter of minutes. When the priest declared them husband and wife, Matt kissed her forehead gently, a gesture that seemed more protective than romantic. The guests applauded hesitantly, still not fully understanding what had happened. 3 hours later, Izzy found herself in Matt's penthouse, still wearing her wedding dress, watching the city that stretched to the horizon through the panoramic window. Reality began to weigh on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. "Do you regret it?" Matt's deep voice made her turn around. He had changed out of his tuxedo into a white dress shirt, but still maintained the formal posture that intimidated her. "Should I?" she retorted, raising her chin in a display of courage she didn't feel. Matt poured 2 glasses of water. He had noticed that she hadn't touched the champagne during the impromptu reception. "We need to talk about how this is going to work." Izzy nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she took the glass. "I imagine you have your rules." A few, he admitted, sitting in the leather armchair opposite the couch where she had settled. This marriage is a convenience for both of us. You gain financial and social security to raise your child. He paused, searching for the right words. I gain a respectable wife and help an innocent child. His words, though practical, wounded something deep within Izzy. I understand. Separate rooms, separate lives, just a public sham. Exactly. But there was something in his expression, a hesitation that contradicted the firmness of his words. My family, they won't accept this easily, especially my sister Helena. She's always had her own plans for my marital future. Izzy laughed, bitterly. A pregnant gold digger carrying another man's child. I imagine that wasn't exactly what she had in mind for her billionaire brother. Matt's cell phone rang, interrupting the conversation. Helena. He looked at Izzy before answering. Matt, what the hell have you done? Helena's strident voice echoed through the room. The photos are already on all the gossip sites. You married a complete stranger, a pregnant woman. Hi, Helena. Yes, I married Izzy. I'm on my way. Don't do anything stupid until I get there. The call was abruptly ended. Matt put the phone away and looked at Izzy, who had paled. My sister is coming. Here, she's intense. She's going to try to convince me to annul the marriage? Asked Izzy, her voice small. Probably. Matt got up and walked to the window. Izzy, I need you to know that regardless of what Helena says, our agreement stands. You are under my protection. Now. The doorbell rang exactly an hour later. Helena Oliveira entered like a hurricane, her Louboutin heels echoing on the marble of the hall. At 42 years old, she was a female version of Matt. Same strong jaw, same piercing gaze, but tempered by years of New York social life and 3 failed marriages. So this is her, said Helena, studying Izzy from head to toe with a clinical gaze. The abandoned bride who managed to hook my brother. Izzy stood up, her chin raised despite her wobbly legs. Nice to meet you, Helena. Matt has told me a lot about you. I'm sure he has, Helena laughed coldly. How much do you want? Excuse me? How much do you want to annul this ridiculous marriage and get out of my brother's life? 100,000, 200. The insult hit Izzy like a slap. Before she could respond, Matt intervened. Helena, that's enough. No, Matt. You may be my younger brother, but I'm not going to stand by and watch you destroy everything you've built for a gold digger. Izzy felt anger rise in her chest, stronger than the humiliation. I don't want your money, she said, her voice firm, or his. But one thing I can guarantee, I'm not going anywhere. Helena smiled coldly. Let's see how long you can keep up that attitude when you find out what it really means to be an Oliveira. 2 weeks had passed since the unlikely wedding, and Izzy still felt like a stranger in her new life. The Oliveira mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut felt like a museum, silent, imposing, and cold like her new husband. Matt left early every morning for the office and came back late, keeping his promise of separate lives with almost military precision. That Monday morning, Izzy woke up with overwhelming nausea. The first trimester of pregnancy was being harder than expected. She managed to get to the bathroom in time, but her legs failed on the way back, and she found herself sitting on the cold marble floor, trembling and sweating. Izzy? Matt's worried voice made her look up. He was in the doorway of her room, still in his pajamas, his hair disheveled. Are you okay? Morning sickness, she managed to say, embarrassed for him to see her in that state. It's normal. Without saying a word, Matt helped her up and led her back to bed. His gestures were surprisingly gentle for someone who maintained so much emotional distance. You need to eat something. I'll have Mrs. Davison prepare some tea. You don't need to worry, Izzy murmured, pulling the blanket up to her chin. It's not part of our agreement. Matt stopped at the door, his back tense. Taking care of your health and the baby's health is part of the agreement. His voice sounded harsher than he intended. I'm going to cancel my morning appointments. I'll take you to the doctor. 2 hours later, they were in the waiting room of Dr. Klein's office, the most renowned obstetrician in New York. Izzy felt out of place in the luxurious environment, especially next to other pregnant women who were obviously older and more established. Matt, for his part, was flipping through an architecture magazine with exaggerated concentration. Mrs. Oliveira, the nurse called, and Izzy still felt surprised to hear her new last name. Dr. Klein was kind and professional, explaining that the morning sickness was normal, but that she needed to eat better. The baby is perfectly healthy, he said, pointing to the ultrasound monitor. Would you like to hear the heartbeat? The rhythmic, accelerated sound filled the room, and Izzy felt her eyes fill with tears. It was real. There really was a life growing inside her. She looked to the side and was surprised to see Matt completely mesmerized by the screen, an expression of admiration and something that seemed to be tenderness etched on his face. It's incredible, he whispered, almost to himself. On the way back home, they stopped at a drugstore to buy vitamins. Izzy was distracted reading the label when she heard raised voices outside. Matt, what a surprise to find you here. She turned and saw a blonde, elegant, and clearly furious woman approaching them. Matt tensed instantly. Letitia, he said, his voice icy. Izzy recognized the name immediately. Letitia Amaral, the ex-fiancée who had left him. Gossip about her. Occasionally appeared in social magazines, always accompanied by different men, always spending fortunes on trips and jewelry. So it's true, said Letitia, looking Izzy up and down with disdain. You really married a wedding refugee. She laughed cruelly. What a fall from grace, darling. Watch your words, Matt warned, stepping forward to protect Izzy. Or what? Are you going to sue me again? Letitia smiled maliciously. By the way, Izzy, isn't it? Do you know that your dear husband tried to destroy me after we broke up? He used all his contacts to sabotage me socially. Izzy felt her stomach turn cold. She looked at Matt, who had visibly paled. He didn't tell you? Letitia continued, clearly pleased with the discomfort she was causing. Matt may seem like your knight in shining armor, but when he feels betrayed, he becomes a beast. Ask poor Caroline if it isn't true. Who is Caroline? Izzy asked, her voice coming out weaker than she intended. Matt grabbed her arm. Let's go. Caroline was my best friend, Letitia shouted behind them as they walked away. Until Matt found out that she was the one who told me about the rival construction company's deal. He sued her and destroyed her career. The poor woman had to move upstate. In the car, the silence was deafening. Izzy looked out the window, processing what she had just found out. Matt, the man who had saved her from humiliation, apparently had a vindictive side that she didn't know. Is it true? She asked finally. Matt gripped the steering wheel tightly. Partially. What do you mean, partially? I found out that Caroline leaked confidential information from my company to Letitia's fiancé, information that almost led me to bankruptcy. His voice was controlled, but Izzy could feel the contained anger. Yes, I sued her. Yes, she lost her job, but I didn't destroy her. She did that to herself when she betrayed my trust. Izzy absorbed the information in silence. There were more layers to Matt than she had imagined. And Letitia, what did you do to her? Nothing she didn't deserve, he replied dryly. Some invitations to events were withdrawn, some advertising contracts cancelled. Nothing that prevented her from rebuilding her life if she really wanted to change. But she had to move out of the city? Matt stopped the car at a red light and finally looked at her. Izzy, I'm not a saint. When I get hurt, I defend myself. The difference is that I don't attack first. He paused, studying her face. Does this change anything between us? Izzy stared at him, seeing for the first time the man behind the mask of control. There was pain there and a vulnerability that he struggled to hide. "I don't know yet," she answered honestly. When they arrived home, Matt walked her to her room. "Rest," he said. "I'll have Mrs. Davison prepare something light for lunch." "Matt," she called him when he was almost at the door, "thank you for today, for taking me to the doctor." He nodded curtly and left, closing the door carefully. Izzy lay down on the bed, one hand on her still flat belly, thinking about the sound of the baby's heartbeat and Matt's fascinated expression when he heard it. Maybe there was more to their agreement than they were both willing to admit. That night she woke up thirsty and went down to the kitchen. The house was silent, but a light came from Matt's study. Curious, she approached and saw him sitting at the table, looking at an ultrasound picture, a copy that the doctor had given them earlier. He didn't see her watching, lost in his own thoughts, and for the first time since they had met, Izzy saw Matthew Oliveira completely disarmed. But 3 weeks after the encounter with Letitia, Matt and Izzy's carefully constructed routine was shattered by a phone call at 2 a.m. The strident sound of the cell phone woke Izzy, who heard Matt's hurried footsteps in the hallway. "What? When?" His voice was tense, worried. "I'm on my way." Izzy left the room and found him already dressing hastily in the hall. "What happened?" she asked, her heart racing. "Fire at the construction site of the residential complex in the Bronx. There are injuries." Matt was putting on his shoes without looking at her. "I have to go there now." "I'm going with you." "No." The answer was immediate and firm. "It's dangerous and you're pregnant." "Matt, it's 3 a.m. You shouldn't be driving. Alone in this state." He stopped and looked at her, noting the determination in her eyes. After a moment of hesitation, he nodded. "All right, but you stay in the car." The drive to the Bronx was tense and silent. Izzy watched Matt's rigid profile, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. She had begun to recognize the signs of when he was truly worried, the clenched jaw, the fixed gaze, the overly controlled breathing. When they arrived at the scene, the chaos was total. 3 fire trucks surrounded the 15-story building under construction, their red lights painting the night. Thick smoke rose from the upper floors, where the flames still consumed construction materials. "Mr. Oliveira?" A helmeted man approached running. "Thank God you're here. We have 2 workers trapped on the 12th floor. The construction elevator broke down and the emergency staircase is blocked by debris." Izzy saw the color drain from Matt's face. "What do you mean trapped?" "They were doing a security check. When the fire started, the fire spread faster than expected because of the solvents that were stored improperly on the 13th floor." "Improperly? What do you mean?" Matt's voice was dangerously low. The foreman swallowed hard. "Sir, the building inspector said that everything was fine, that the paperwork was in order." Matt closed his eyes for a moment, clearly processing the implications. If there was negligence, if someone died, he would be held criminally and civilly. Liable. His company, his reputation, everything could crumble. "Who is the inspector?" he asked, his voice too controlled. "Robert Diaz, sir. He left early today." Izzy watched everything from the car, seeing Matt transform before her eyes. The man who had treated her with growing gentleness in recent weeks had given way to the ruthless businessman she had heard about. He began giving quick, precise orders, coordinating with the firefighters, talking on the phone with lawyers, organizing the chaos with an efficiency that was both impressive and frightening. It was then that she heard the screams. "There's someone else up there, on the 15th floor." Everyone looked up. A figure was moving behind a window, waving desperately. The fire had spread and cut off any escape route. "Who the hell is that person?" shouted the fire chief. The foreman turned pale. "It must be Robert. He must have gone back to try to hide the false documents." Matt froze. Robert Diaz, the man whose negligence had caused the fire, was trapped up there. The man who could destroy his company with his testimony, or save it if he never made it out alive. Izzy saw Matt's internal struggle even from afar. She saw when he addressed. The fire chief saw the tense discussion, saw when he pointed to the building. She couldn't hear, but the body language of both was clear. It was too risky to attempt a rescue. That's when Izzy made the decision that would change everything between them. She got out of the car. There's an external fire escape on the east side of the building, she shouted, running towards Matt. I saw it when we arrived. It's damaged, but it can be used to get to the 15th floor. Everyone turned to her. Ma'am, please get back in the car, said the fire chief. She's right, said Matt, looking in the direction Izzy was pointing. There's an external fire escape. We installed it last month. It's too risky, warned the chief. The structure may have been compromised by the heat. Matt looked at Izzy, then at the man in the window. She saw the exact moment when he made his decision, not the cold decision of a businessman calculating losses and gains, but the choice of a man who couldn't let someone die, even if it was someone who had betrayed him. I'm going up, he said. Matt, no! Izzy grabbed his arm. Let the firefighters do it. They said it's too dangerous. I know the building better than anyone. He looked into her eyes, and for the first time, she saw fear there, not fear of death, but fear of leaving her alone. If anything happens to me, nothing's going to happen, she said firmly, surprising herself with her own conviction. Because I won't let it. You saved me when I needed it most. Now it's my turn. What happened next was something that neither of them would ever forget. While Matt climbed the external staircase accompanied by two firefighters, Izzy coordinated the support on the ground, using her knowledge of basic nursing to help with the minor injuries and organizing communication between the teams. 20 minutes of absolute tension later, Matt came down carrying Robert Diaz, unconscious but alive. When his feet touched the ground, Izzy ran to him, and for the first time since they had met, she hugged him. It wasn't a hug between strangers, fulfilling an agreement. It was the hug of a woman who had almost lost the man who was learning to love. Matt held her tight against his chest, breathing in her scent, feeling the relief flood his body. There, in the midst of the smoke and chaos, with Izzy in his arms, he realized that the agreement between them had become something much more dangerous. He was falling in love with his wife of convenience. Thank you, he whispered in her ear. You saved his life, and probably mine too. When they separated, there were tears in both of their eyes, and anyone watching would have seen clearly. Those two were no longer strangers pretending to be married. The problem was that the photos were being taken, and some people very interested in destroying Matt Oliveira were watching every move. Nazdul. 3 days after the fire, Matt and Izzy's lives had changed irreversibly. The press hailed Matt as a hero, and the photos of him saving Robert Diaz were in all the newspapers. More importantly, the photos of Izzy hugging him after the rescue had gone viral on social media, with people commenting on the couple's true love. But it was precisely this change in public perception that brought unexpected consequences. That Thursday morning, Izzy was in the garden reading when Matt arrived from the office early, his face grim. He had a manila envelope in his hands. We need to talk, he said, sitting next to her on the wooden bench. This arrived at my office today. Izzy took the envelope and pulled out the photos. They were images of her and Matt from the day of the fire, but also older ones. Them leaving the doctor's office, in the drugstore parking lot, and even some taken through the windows of the mansion, showing intimate moments. Her serving coffee. To him, on the terrace, the two of them laughing at some joke during dinner, Matt gently touching her belly while they talked. Who took these photos? She whispered, feeling a chill down her spine. Someone who has been following us for weeks, replied Matt, his jaw clenched, and who knows exactly what they're doing. A letter accompanied the photos. Izzy read it with a racing heart. Mr. Oliveira, the photos clearly show that your marriage of convenience has become something more. It would be a shame if the press found out that the national hero deceived the public with a romantic hoax to gain positive publicity after his previous scandals. $500,000 guarantees that these images remain private. Payment instructions will follow. Blackmail, said Izzy, her voice trembling. Someone is blackmailing us. It's not just that. Matt stood up and began to pace back and forth. If these photos leak, they won't just expose that we've fallen in love. They'll suggest that I used our marriage as a marketing ploy from the beginning, that I planned everything to improve my public image. Izzy felt her stomach sink. And people will believe that. After what happened with Letitia and Caroline? After years of speculation about my business methods? Matt laughed bitterly. They'll love to believe that the calculating tycoon orchestrated even his own marriage for publicity purposes. Matt's phone rang. Helena. Hi, Helena. Matt, have you seen social media today? Helena's voice was strained. There are rumors circulating, gossip about you two, about the wedding being fake. Matt and Izzy exchanged glances. What kind of rumors? That everything was staged, that you paid Izzy to put on this show after. Ralph abandoned her, that even the fire was too convenient for the timing. Helena paused. Matt, someone is spreading this intentionally, someone with access to information about you. After he hung up, Matt sat down heavily next to Izzy. It's starting, he said. Someone is planting seeds of doubt before revealing the evidence. Who would do that? Izzy asked. But even as she spoke, a cold suspicion grew in her chest. The answer came 2 hours later in the form of another envelope, this time delivered directly to the mansion door by a courier. I hope you enjoyed the sample. Tomorrow night there's a charity gala at the Plaza Hotel. You will be there acting like the perfect couple the press believes you are. During the event, one of the waiters will deliver a cell phone with detailed payment instructions. Don't try to find me. Don't involve the police. Any false move, and the photos go to every newspaper and gossip site in the country. Oh, and Izzy, give my regards to Ralph. He was very helpful with information about you two. L.A. Izzy dropped the letter on the floor. Letitia, she whispered. She's working with Ralph. Matt picked up the letter, reading it again. Of course. He must have looked her up after he ran out on the wedding. Two jilted exes joining forces to destroy us. But Ralph knows the baby is his, Izzy said, her hand instinctively protecting her belly. If this leaks, the child will grow up with that stigma. That's exactly why they chose this strategy, replied Matt, his voice hard. They know we have much more to lose now than just money or reputation. Izzy stood up abruptly. No, I won't let them use my child as a weapon. Izzy, we have no choice. If we pay, maybe they'll come back asking for more money. Next month and the next and the next. She turned to him, her eyes shining with a determination that Matt had not yet seen. Matt, I need to tell you something. Something I discovered about Ralph in the last weeks of our relationship. Matt frowned. What? He was having affairs. Several. I found messages on his cell phone, photos. Izzy swallowed hard. And more than that, he was embezzling money from the company where he worked. Small amounts, but constant. I never said anything because I was pregnant and scared. Do you have proof of this? I do. I photographed everything before deleting it from his cell phone. They're saved in my cloud. Izzy stared at him. If he wants war, he's going to get it. That night, as they planned their strategy, Matt realized that he had completely underestimated the woman he had married. Izzy was not just the sweet, naive victim he thought he was saving. She was a survivor, a fighter who fiercely protected those she loved. And as they organized their own cards to play against Ralph and Letitia, they both knew that they had crossed a line from which there was no return. The marriage of convenience had become a real partnership, a union of two people willing to fight together against any threat. But they still didn't know that Helena was also playing her own game, and that the charity gala the next day would be just the beginning of a battle much more complex than they imagined. The next morning, while Izzy was sleeping, Matt received a call that made his blood run cold. "Matt? It's Dr. Klein. I'm so sorry to call so early, but there's been a data breach from my office. Someone hacked our system and stole Izzy's medical records, including the dates of the tests that can establish the baby's paternity." Matt closed his eyes. Now they had not only compromising photos, but also medical proof that the child was not his. The blackmail had become much more dangerous. The charity gala at the Plaza Hotel was in full swing when everything fell apart. Izzy, wearing a navy blue dress that discreetly disguised her 4-month pregnancy, held Matt's arm as they circulated among the guests. To any observer, they were the perfect picture of a couple in love. Him attentive, her radiant, both exchanging affectionate glances that were no longer feigned. "There she is," Matt murmured, indicating with a discreet nod. Letitia was on the other side of the ballroom, dazzling in a gold dress, talking animatedly with a group of businessmen. She saw them and raised her champagne glass in a sarcastic toast. The waiter appeared exactly at 10 o'clock, as promised, delivering a cell phone discreetly to Matt along with a glass of water. The message was simple. "Men's room on the 2nd. Your floor. Alone. 5 minutes." "I'm not letting you go alone," Izzy whispered. "It's too risky. If they suspect you're listening..." "Matt, we're in this together. Completely together." She followed him at a safe distance, hiding behind a marble column in the hallway on the 2nd floor. Through the slightly open door of the restroom, she could hear the conversation. "Punctual, as always," said a male voice that she recognized immediately. "Ralph, did you bring the money?" "I brought a counteroffer," replied Matt, his voice icy. "We know about the embezzlement, about the affairs. We have proof." Ralph laughed. "You think I care about that now? I'm moving overseas, Matt. Portugal, to be specific. With the money you're going to pay me, I'll live very well there. What if I refuse? Then in 1 hour, every gossip site in the country will receive a very interesting package. Photos of you two being intimate, medical documents proving the baby isn't yours, and a very revealing audio of you admitting that the marriage was a sham." Izzy froze. What audio? When had Matt... What audio? Matt's voice came out tense. "You remember that night 2 weeks ago, when you had dinner on the terrace? Izzy had gone inside to take a call from her mother. You called me drunk, talking about how everything had gotten complicated, how you didn't expect to fall in love with her, how you feared she'd find out that the marriage started as a calculated move to improve your image after the scandal with Letitia." Izzy's world crumbled. She remembered that night. Matt had drunk more wine than usual during dinner. He was melancholy. When she returned from the call, he was putting away his phone and seemed disturbed. She had asked if everything was okay, and he just said he was tired. "I never said that." Matt's voice was low, dangerous. "No? Then explain this." The sound of a cell phone playing echoed through the restroom. Matt's drunken voice became audible. "It wasn't supposed to be like this, Ralph. It was supposed to be simple. Marry her, give the baby a home, improve my public image after all this shit with Letitia and Caroline. But now I've actually fallen in love with her, and I don't know how to tell her that in the beginning it was calculated." Izzy put her hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. Everything made sense now. The sudden proposal at the altar, Ralph's insistence that Matt knew about the pregnancy. It was all a lie, a marketing ploy. "I recorded our conversation. That night, continued Ralph. You were drunk, vulnerable, guilty. And now I have proof that the great national hero, Matt Oliveira, used a pregnant, abandoned woman to clean up his reputation. Son of a bitch, Matt muttered. The money, Matt. 500,000. Or in 1 hour, all of New York will know what kind of man you really are. Izzy couldn't listen anymore. She ran to the elevator, tears blurring her vision. Everything was a lie. The heroism at the altar, the growing gentleness, the medical care. It was all part of a cold, calculated plan to restore Matt's image after the previous scandals. She had fallen in love with a lie. 20 minutes later, Matt arrived home and found her packing her bags in the bedroom. Izzy, where were you? I looked for you everywhere at the hotel. I heard, she said without turning around, folding a blouse with trembling hands. I heard everything. The silence that followed was deafening. Matt closed his eyes, knowing exactly what she had heard. Izzy, let me explain. Explain what? She turned, her face wet with tears. How you used my humiliation to improve your reputation. How the abandoned baby in my womb was the perfect opportunity for you to look like a hero. In the beginning, yes. The admission came out as a desperate cry. In the beginning, it was that I'm not going to lie. But that changed, Izzy. It changed. Completely. When did it change, Matt? She threw a suitcase on the floor. When did you decide that I wasn't just a convenient marketing tool? At the doctor's office, when I heard the baby's heartbeat. Matt approached, but she backed away. At that moment, I knew that everything had changed, that you two had become the most important thing in my life. Lies, she whispered. Everything has always been lies with you, just like Ralph. The comparison hit him like a punch. I'm not like Ralph. He abandoned you. I stayed. You stayed because it was convenient, because it worked for your plans. Izzy picked up another suitcase. You know what's most cruel, Matt? That I actually believed that someone could love me. That after all the humiliation, someone could see me as more than a victim to be saved. I love you, he said, his voice breaking. I love you, Izzy, more than I thought I could love anyone. No. She shook her head violently. You love the idea of me, the vulnerable woman who makes you look noble, the pregnant belly that gives you a second chance to be seen as a family man. Matt tried to hold her, but she dodged him. Where are you going to go? Far away from you. Far away from this sham. Izzy stopped at the bedroom door. And Matt? You don't need to worry about paying the blackmail. Tomorrow I'm going to give an interview telling everything. About Ralph abandoning me. About you proposing a marriage of convenience. About how I was stupid enough to confuse gratitude with love. Izzy, don't do this. Think about the baby. I'm thinking about the baby, she shouted. I'm thinking about raising my child away from men who treat people like pieces in a game. She slammed the door, leaving Matt alone in the room that had been theirs for a few precious months. On the nightstand, he saw the ultrasound she had. Left behind, the photo he looked at every night before going to sleep. 2 hours later, Helena found Matt in the study, drinking whiskey straight from the bottle. I saw Izzy leaving with her bags, she said, sitting in the armchair opposite him. What happened? Matt told her everything. The blackmail, the audio, Izzy's escape. Helena listened in silence, her face expressionless. Well, she said finally, maybe it's better this way. Matt looked at his sister in disbelief. Better? Matt, you're an Oliveira. Our family doesn't bow to blackmail or scandals. We never bow. Helena leaned forward. Let her go. Let her give the interview. In 6 months, no one will remember this story. What about the baby? What baby? Did you sign any birth certificates? Did you legally adopt the child? Helena smiled coldly. Biologically, that baby isn't your problem. Matt stared at his sister as if seeing her for the first time. "Get out of here," he said softly. "Matt, get out!" The shout echoed through the mansion. Alone again, Matt looked out the window at the garden where Izzy used to read in the morning. In 24 hours, he had lost the woman he loved, the baby he had learned to consider his child, and any chance of being the man she made him want to be. The next morning, Izzy's interview was in every newspaper. She had told everything with impressive dignity, taking some of the blame for having deluded herself, but making it clear that Matt had used her vulnerability for personal gain. The public's reaction was swift and brutal. The man who had been hailed as a national hero a week before was now seen as an opportunistic manipulator, and Izzy had disappeared completely, taking with her the only true love Matt had ever known. Woody's 2 months had passed since Izzy had left the Oliveira mansion. She had taken refuge in a small town in upstate New York at the home of her Aunt Connie, her mother's younger sister. The place was simple, a 3-bedroom house with a yard full of apple trees and a silence that, for the first time in months, allowed her to think clearly. The 6-month belly was already impossible to hide, and she had found work as an administrative assistant at a local veterinary clinic. The salary was modest, but sufficient for her basic needs, and the townspeople treated her with a simple kindness that she had forgotten existed. But even in the tranquility of the countryside, Izzy couldn't completely forget New York, especially not after what she had discovered that Monday morning. "Izzy, there's someone here to see you," announced Aunt Connie, entering the kitchen where Izzy was having breakfast. "A woman from New York says it's important," Izzy frowned. Very few people knew where she was. Only her mother, her aunt, and Dr. Klein, who had offered to monitor her pregnancy remotely. The woman waiting for her in the living room was elegant, in her 40s, with short brown hair and a determined look. Izzy didn't recognize her immediately. "Isabella Santos. My name is Caroline Meneses. I believe you've heard of me." The name hit Izzy like a lightning bolt. Caroline, the former friend of Letitia, who Matt had sued, and whose career had been destroyed. "What do you want with me?" asked Izzy, instinctively protective. "The same thing you should want," replied Caroline, sitting in the chair offered by Aunt Connie. "Justice against Letitia Amaral and Ralph Mendez." Caroline opened a leather folder and pulled out a stack of documents. "Do you think you were the first person they tried to blackmail?" Izzy sat down slowly, her heart racing. 3 years ago, when Letitia broke up with Matt, she didn't do it by chance. She was being blackmailed by Ralph. Yes, the same Ralph you know. They met at a social event, and he found out about the extramarital affair she was having with the businessman who later married her. "I don't understand," murmured Izzy. "Ralph documented Letitia's affair, recorded conversations, took pictures. He told her that he would tell everything to Matt unless she ended the relationship, and helped Ralph get information about Matt's business dealings." Caroline shuffled through the papers. "Letitia gave in to the blackmail. She broke up with Matt, married the older businessman, and started leaking information from Matt's company to Ralph." Izzy felt her stomach churn. "How do you know all this?" "Because Letitia came to me at the time. She was desperate, needing help." Caroline laughed bitterly. "I was naive. I thought I was helping a friend in trouble. It was information that I passed on to her that ended up in the hands of Matt's competitors." "So you really betrayed Matt's trust?" "Yes, but not in the way he thinks. I didn't know I was being used." Caroline leaned forward. "When Matt found out, I tried to explain, but he was so hurt, so angry. He wouldn't listen, and Letitia let me take all the blame." Izzy absorbed the information, processing the implications. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because when I saw your interview on TV, I recognized the pattern. Ralph and Letitia are using the same strategy they used with me and Matt 3 years ago." Caroline pulled another document from the folder. "And because I discovered something," That changes everything. It was a death certificate. The businessman Letitia married died last month. Heart attack. And guess who was present at the time of death? Ralph Mendez, listed as a close family friend. Izzy swallowed hard. You think they... I have no proof of anything beyond what's here. Caroline indicated the papers. But I'm sure of one thing. Ralph and Letitia have been partners for much longer than anyone imagines. And now, with Letitia's inheritance, they have the resources to disappear completely. Then why the blackmail? If they have money... Revenge, said Caroline simply. They want to destroy Matt completely before disappearing, and using you was the cruelest way they could do it. Izzy stood up and walked to the window, watching the mountains that stretched to the horizon. Even if all this is true, what does it change? Matt still used me. The marriage was still a sham in the beginning. Was it? Asked Caroline. Izzy, you heard a recording where Matt admits that he fell in love with you. A recording made by a man who was trying to blackmail him. Have you never wondered why Ralph recorded exactly that conversation? Izzy turned, confused. Because he was preparing the ground for the blackmail from the beginning. He called Matt that night, drunk, not to vent, but to provoke him, to make him say things that could be used against him later. Caroline approached and handed another document to Izzy. It was a phone transcript. I got this through a friend who works in private investigation. It's the complete recording of the conversation that night, not just the excerpts that Ralph used to blackmail you. Izzy read it with her heart in her throat. Ralph, man, you really fell for that woman, didn't you? The pregnant woman you saved? Matt, Ralph, yes, it wasn't supposed to be like this. It was supposed to be simple. Marry her, give the baby a home, improve my public image after all this shit with Letitia and Caroline. But now, I've actually fallen in love with her, and I don't know how to tell her that in the beginning it was calculated. I'm afraid of losing her. Ralph, but don't you think she suspects? Matt, sometimes I think so, and it kills me, Ralph, because now I love her more than I thought I could love anyone. She and the baby have become my real family. I would give my life for them both. Ralph, and what if she found out about your initial motivations? Matt, I would lose everything that matters in my life. She's the best thing that has ever happened to me, even though it started in the wrong way. Tears burned Izzy's eyes. The complete conversation painted a completely different picture, that of a man tormented by guilt, but genuinely in love. Ralph edited the recording, she whispered. He took out the parts where Matt talked about true love. Exactly. Caroline took the transcript back. And there's more. I found out that Ralph wasn't just running away from you when he called off the wedding. He was running from the FBI. There's a warrant out for his arrest for fraud and money laundering. Izzy sat down heavily in the armchair, her hands trembling over her belly. So everything was a setup from the beginning. From long before the beginning. Ralph never intended to marry you, Izzy. He used you to get close to Matt, to study your routine, to execute the revenge plan that he and Letitia had been preparing for years. The silence stretched through the room as Izzy processed everything. Finally, she looked at Caroline. What do you want me to do? Help me expose the truth before they disappear forever. Caroline leaned forward, her eyes shining with determination. They destroyed my career, ruined Matt's relationship, used you as a puppet. We can't let them get away with it. How? There's an event next week, the launch of a new development from Matt's company. Ralph and Letitia will be there. I know. This because I have a contact in the social press, Carolina smiled. It's our chance to confront them publicly, with proof in front of witnesses. Izzy touched her belly, feeling the baby move. Her daughter, she had discovered the sex at her last appointment, deserved to be born in a world where truth prevailed over manipulation. "I need to talk to Matt first," she said finally. "He doesn't know you're here. He doesn't know about the evidence we found." "Then it's time to tell him." Carolina smiled for the first time since she had arrived. "Are you sure? After everything you've been through?" Izzy stood up, a new determination growing in her chest. "Caroline, I spent 2 months believing that the man I fell in love with was a lie. If there's a chance, even a small one, that I'm wrong, I need to find out." She paused, looking out the window once more. "Besides, Ralph and Letitia won't just pay for what they did to me. They'll pay for what they did to all of us." The Oliveira Tower, the newest development from Oliveira and Associates, rose imposingly against the New York night sky. On the 30th floor, the launch event brought together the city's business elite, but Matt barely noticed the guests' compliments or the photographers' flashes. In the 2 months since Izzy had left, he had become a shadow of himself, fulfilling his professional obligations with mechanical efficiency, but without the passion that had once driven him. "Matt, you need to at least pretend you're happy," murmured Helena, approaching with 2 glasses of champagne. "Half the specialized press is here." He nodded distractedly, his eyes scanning the ballroom. It was pathetic how he still expected to see Izzy at every event, even knowing that she had completely disappeared from his life. It was then that he saw her. Izzy was standing at the entrance to the ballroom, wearing a black dress that accentuated her 6-month belly. She was even more beautiful, with a maternal glow that made her radiate a serene beauty. Next to her, a woman that Matt recognized with shock, Carolina Meneses. "What is she doing here?" Helena followed his gaze and frowned. "And who is that woman with her?" Before Matt could answer, a murmur spread through the ballroom. Ralph and Letitia had arrived, she dazzling in a gold dress, he impeccable in his tuxedo. They moved through the crowd with the confidence of those who believed they held all the cards. Izzy walked directly towards Matt, ignoring the whispers and curious glances of the guests. When she stopped in front of him, the entire ballroom seemed to have fallen silent. "I," she said simply, her voice firmer than she felt. "Izzy." The name came like a prayer from Matt's lips. "You, how's the baby?" "She's fine. It's a girl." Izzy touched her belly instinctively and saw Matt's eyes fill with emotion. "A girl," he repeated, marveling. Did you choose a name?" "Marina," she replied, watching his face light up. It was the name they had discussed one night months ago, when they were still pretending that the marriage was just for convenience. "Matt, I need to tell you some things. About Ralph, about Letitia, about everything." Before she could continue, Ralph approached them, Letitia in tow. "What a touching reunion," he said, the smile not reaching his eyes. "Izzy, I thought you had learned to stay away from men who use you." "I learned," she replied calmly. "That's why I'm here to expose you." Ralph laughed, but there was nervousness in his laughter. "Expose what?" "Everyone already knows the truth. About you too." "Do they?" Carolina approached the group holding a tablet. "Because I'm sure there are some truths you'd prefer to keep secret." Ralph's face paled as he recognized her. "Caroline, still trying to get revenge on Matt for destroying your career?" "Actually," Carolina smiled coldly, "I'm here to thank him. Because it was investigating my ruin that I discovered some very interesting things about you and your partner." She activated the tablet, and Ralph's voice echoed through the ballroom's sound system, the complete recording of the conversation with Matt, not the edited version used for blackmail. Guests drew closer, fascinated by the drama unfolding. "This is the complete conversation, not the edited excerpts you used for blackmail," Carolina announced loudly. It clearly shows how Ralph manipulated Matt to obtain confessions that he would later use against him. Letitia grabbed Ralph's arm. Let's go now. We're not done yet, said Izzy, pulling a folder of documents from her purse. Because we also have arrest warrants, suspicious death certificates, and bank records that show how you two have been operating together for years. The ballroom was completely silent now, all the guests attentive to the confrontation. Matt looked at Izzy with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. This was not the vulnerable woman who had left his house 2 months ago. This was a warrior. Ralph Mendez, the authoritative voice of Detective Peterson echoed through the ballroom as he and 2 officers approached. You are under arrest for fraud, blackmail, and suspicion of homicide. Ralph tried to run, but was quickly restrained. Letitia, seeing that the game was over, surrendered without resistance, but not before casting a last venomous look at Izzy. You think you've won something? She shouted as she was being led away. The damage is already done. Everyone knows it was all a lie between you. As the police left with the 2, the ballroom exploded in animated conversation. Matt and Izzy found themselves alone in the middle of the crowd, their eyes fixed on each other. Why did you do this? He asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. After everything, why did you help me? Because, Izzy took a deep breath, because I discovered that I believed in a lie. The lie that you didn't really love me. Matt took a step towards her. Izzy, I heard the complete recording, Matt. I heard you saying that you love me, that you would give your life for me and the baby. I heard the despair in your voice when you thought about losing me. Tears streamed freely down his face now. And yet, I lost you. Because of my cowardice, my pride? No, Izzy approached, placing her hands on his face. You lost me because I was too proud to fight for what we had, because I chose to believe the edited version of our story instead of trusting the man who saved me in every way. Matt held her hands against his face. Izzy, I love you. I love you and I love our daughter. I don't care how it started. What matters is how we want it to end. How we want it to begin, she corrected, smiling through tears. Because this time, we're going to start the right way, with the truth between us. When he kissed her, there in the middle of the crowded ballroom, the guests erupted in applause. Helena, who had watched everything from afar, approached them. Welcome back to the family, she said to Izzy, and for the first time her voice sounded genuinely warm. I apologize for everything. 6 months later, in the garden of the mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, Matt held Marina in his arms, while Izzy arranged the flowers on the breakfast table. The baby was perfect, big eyes like her mother's, a calm temperament, and a smile that melted anyone's heart. She's growing so fast, murmured Matt, kissing his daughter's forehead. You see, she's not even biologically yours, and she's already a stubborn Oliveira, joked Izzy, sitting next to him on the garden bench. Matt looked at her seriously. Izzy, you know that has never mattered to me, right? Marina is my daughter in every way that matters. I know, she smiled, kissing him softly, and she'll know too, that she was loved and chosen by the best dad she could have. Donna Carmen approached, carrying a tray with fresh coffee. Izzy's mother had moved into a smaller house on the mansion grounds, where she tended the garden and spoiled her granddaughter whenever possible. The adoption agency called, she announced, smiling. The adoption papers are ready. Marina will officially be an Oliveira next week. Matt felt his eyes fill with tears once more. In recent months, he had discovered that fatherhood, even non-biological, had transformed him in ways he never imagined possible. And there's one more thing, said Izzy, pulling an envelope from her pocket. It arrived this morning. Matt opened it and found a letter from Carolina. She had managed to get her professional license back and opened a new consulting office. Thank you for giving me a second chance, the letter read, and for teaching me that sometimes forgiving is more powerful than seeking revenge. Do you remember what you said to me at the altar that first day? Asked Izzy, watching Marina play with Matt's fingers. That I wouldn't let you go through this alone. And you didn't. Even when I left, even when I believed the lie, you were fighting for us in your own way. Matt pulled her closer, Marina safe between them. And now, Izzy smiled, looking at her daughter and then at the husband who had become her true love. Now we have the rest of our lives to discover what a marriage that started with convenience and became the most true love story I've ever lived is like. The morning sun bathed the garden in golden light, and for the first time since they had met, Matt and Izzy knew with absolute certainty that they had found their happily ever after. Not the perfect fairy tale kind, but something even more precious. A real love, built on truth, forgiveness, and the daily choice to fight for each other. Marina babbled something unintelligible, and they both laughed, completely in love with the little life that had transformed them from two strangers into a true family.